Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Vebna Foroya. So previously, I was showing you a fairly new submission management system called Dapple. And yeah, it looks very cool. So check out that past episode and see if it's something you're interested in, especially, if you're looking to start a Lit Mag or journal or you're thinking about changing your existing submission management system. Now, on this podcast, I have shared with you Submittable, right? Just an overview from the submitter's perspective and also Subfolio and a few others I've mentioned right in episode 15. So I'd recommend you watch and look back at episodes 36 and 48 and also 35 and the past episode as well. So I put together a playlist a little bit on YouTube of submission management systems, so you can check out that section on YouTube if you like. I also put together a list of over 8 submission management systems, and I will add to that list. That's why I put over 8, right? So, yeah. In any case, you may have, those following this podcast, you may have seen me hop into Duotrope from time to time to check the status of listings and calls to confirm and cross reference against chill subs. The thing about, Duotrope, right? It's been around for quite some time. I think I mentioned this on the podcast. If not, it's been around since 2005, I believe, so a very, very long time, right? And yeah, and part of Duotrope, right, is Duosuma, right? That's their submission management system. And I'm not sure when Duosuma was created, whether it was around the same year or later on. In any case, I think Duotrope, overall does a really phenomenal job, ensuring that, listings are updated, that writers, artists, poets can find listings easily, that it's accurate and current. If we go over here, now I'm not going to do a separate episode on Duotrope. I think more so just Duosuma at this time, and just talk about like same thing what I did with Dapple. Talk about some of the features and things like that. I don't have a extensive experience with Duosuma, but I have experience with it more so as a submitter or poet or writer myself. And I've used Duotrope to check listings and stuff like that myself. And yeah, so let's hop over here. So I'm on Duotrope's site here. And yeah, so again, it's a great resource for writers and artists, and they have tons of listings. And yeah, so we scroll down to the bottom of the page here. It says they have 4,113 submissions reported, 2,321 listings updated, 24 new listings added, 281 listings audited, 1,862 guidelines checked, and the most recent update was just 1 hour ago. So it says here, in quoting this, they check each listing's guidelines page for changes once a month on average, and they run a full audit of every active listing twice a year. So I really feel like the team at Duotrope/Duosuma is a very responsive, and they provide great support. Every interaction I've ever had with them has been nothing but great, for sure. I'll definitely say that. So I think they do a really good job of keeping these listings updated, ensuring accuracy, and it really helps writers and artists find homes for their work, very easily, right? With what they have here, it's a great platform and search database essentially, right? Similar to chill subs, right? I feel like the accuracy of Duotrope is very good, for sure. And yeah, so let's go back to Duosuma over here. I'm just gonna, do some of the same things I've done in the past, right? I don't really go into what you see as a submitter per se. I just want to, I'm on episode 51. I showed you, right, the discover page, right? And this is how you can find again, submission opportunities, right? For poetry, fiction, nonfiction, drama, visual art, multimedia. And, you can uncheck fee based, so you can filter for free opportunities. And I'm not signed in, again, for a lot of discover pages or the discover opportunity ones, you don't need to sign in or log in. However, I highly recommend you do create an account so you can see, I think you can favorite these and submittable, right? You can save when you're logged in. Yeah, so it's beneficial to create a Duotrope, an account with Duotrope, right? Absolutely. And to use Duosuma as a submitter, right? It's free, right? However, some of the calls in existence, right, have, right, as I mentioned, reading fees. So that's where you want to filter out, right? Perhaps ones that are, have fees, right? And you want to submit to places that are free. So just use the filtering, right? To find those calls. And, they have, when you log in, right, you can browse around a little bit more what Duotrope's about. Now, something about Duotrope, right? Duotrope isn't free. So it has a $5 a month subscription, and then they have an annual plan as well that you can pay in, the full 12 months in advance, I believe. Or, or I think it's like, is it 10 months? You're paying for 10 months, right? Or 12 months for the price of 10. That's what it was. So yeah, an annual subscription. So they offer, a monthly subscription, $5 per month. And that's not too bad, honestly, considering it's a great resource, Duotrope is, absolutely. So, I would highly recommend, again, you take some time and check out Duotrope, create an account, and maybe get a subscription with them. But yeah, to use Duosuma, right, the submission man system, there's no like fees for the, to use that, right, at all. But some publishers or some lit magazine journals you're submitting to may have processing and reading fees, right? So that may happen, so you can again use their discover opportunities pages, other, search databases I've shared on this podcast in episode 51, particularly, right, to find fee-free submission opportunities. So yeah, I think Duotrope's totally worth it. I think it's helped a lot of writers and artists in the community find, places to submit to, for sure. So yeah, let's go back to Duosuma, right? So this is the submission management system again, and yeah, so I'm just gonna go through the overview for publishers and agents, right? That's all for this podcast, basically. So yeah, um, it says here, we help publishing projects and literary agents receive and manage their submissions quickly, easily, and affordably. That's what Duosuma is, right? It's a submission management system, and it helps with organization, right? Like Dapple, like Subfolio, and Submittable, and I mentioned a couple others, right? Oleata. So yeah, let's just go through some of the features here, and then I'll state maybe some of the ones I really like and some things that I'm not too familiar with it myself, just mostly familiar with Duotrope, and I've heard a lot of things from like fellow friends and community about Duosuma, and yeah, so I'm just going to share comments and thoughts and things like that. So it says here, low fair fees with automatic discount programs. They don't take a commission at all, right? Tip jar, and I'm quoting this off their site here. It says build your team, yeah, you can set permissions and responsibilities per team member. That's really nice. It says add or remove team members anytime. The size of your team has no impact on billing. I think that's really great because submittable, that is something, I think a lot faced with, you have a cap on the amount of team members you have and stuff. So I think that's great. That's very unique. So I don't think I have that in my pros and cons list. So I might have to go back and add that bullet point. Yeah. So it says each team member will need to have a Duotrope account, but a Duotrope subscription is not required, for, Duosuma if you're going to use the submission management system as a publisher or lit manga journal. And it says a single account can cover multiple publishing projects or literary agents. And yeah. And then you have to meet the criteria for listings, right? And yeah. And mostly that is, being active, right? And things like that. And there are other things that entails. I won't go through all of the criteria you have to meet, but, it says automatic assignment of submissions. They're automatically assigned to a team member of your team. And then you can choose load balancing, round robin, or random automatic assignment. If you don't want automatic assignment, they also offer manual or predetermined assignment submissions. So that's great. I think that's, again, what I feel like Submittable is really hard to set up workflow wise for that. I don't know. It was just tough for me to really grasp that in Submittable and, workflow configuration and assignments and stuff like that. I think it's a really kind of tough. And yeah, so anyways, we moved again, after July 4th, we started opening up on Subfolio, right? So we've been on Subfolio since, it's coming up on a little over 2 months now, right? Because August 4th has passed. So yeah. So Subfolio does have that too, round robin and, automatic assignment. So that's great. I think that's really neat that Duosuma has that as well. Smart response templates, auto responses to new submissions, right? Bulk actions to save time, ratings, reviews, and tags. So I think this is nice, right? You have a vast amount of options for, a rating or scoring system here. Accept, decline, yes, no, maybe, 5-star, letter grades A through F, right? So yeah, accept, decline is pretty typical in submission systems, but the yes, no, maybe 5-star, A plus through F. I think that's good. I mentioned in the past episode Dapple, right? It showed the scoring system, so I don't know if they have any other types of scoring in there, for assessing submissions and stuff, right? And then it says you can label submissions with custom tags. I personally really like tags in submission management systems. I think it's absolutely necessary. One of the submission management systems I use, Oleata, didn't really have that. I felt like Submittable has that. Savfolio has tags, and labels. I think it's important to tag and label things. Our emails, right? Inboxes, right, have tags and labels. So I think, it just helps keep track of things, labeling and tagging things. I'm someone who likes to have, tags and labels on to keep track of our, archive and stuff like that, right? So it says smart submission periods. You can open or close at a certain date, custom questions, response targets and assignment deadlines, no quotas, unless you want one. And it also says here, Duosuma can send reminders to team members or reports to team leaders. So yeah, I think that's really great. Submittable does have, reminder features in the back end and stuff like that. And you could do like, I think you can set it to once a month or, once a week for each category and call. You can configure it right individually for those. And then Subfolio has is still fairly new, right? So notifications and stuff is like something on the way and some additional features. So you totally get notifications in Portfolio though. But yeah, every system that launches or just starts, right? Like Portfolio or Dapple, right? I'm sure more features will be added, things will be changed maybe from what I just shared with you, right? In some of these episodes, just because of how early they're starting off, right? In terms of like the just launching, right? So Duosuma has been around quite some time, so any new system, it takes time for it to you know it evolves is what I'm saying. It doesn't. And yeah, and features and feature requests are bound to happen, right, with new systems and things like that, right? It's just bound to happen. So we may see totally new things, from Dapple more so than what I shared, and same thing with Subfolio, right? So, anyways, yeah, I think it's important. Most every submission management system I've used, except for Oleata, has had, notifications, and so I think that's a disadvantage with like something like, I think it's too hard with, just via email and solely using email and a Google form, right? I think submission management systems really have a lot of great tools for, especially if you have a team or volunteer staff, and it helps you keep tabs on everything, right, in a central place. So yeah, it says collect submission fees or voluntary tips, and then it says any account can receive an unlimited number of submissions per month. Duosuma does not force any account to have a quota. That's nice. So that's another plus, right? And then, however, if you want to limit the number of submissions per month, you can have submission caps. So yeah, Submittable had submission caps and limits. Quite a few submission management systems I've come into contact with have that ability to set a number of caps on submissions, right? So you want your workload to be manageable too, and you're like how many submissions are you going to allot for the window, right? So some places do that, some places don't have caps on submissions, so it varies. And yeah, so I think it's nice to have the ability to collect voluntary tips. And submission fees suck, but some places implement them, right, to offset costs, and stuff like that. And I talk about that in episode 51, right? Other ways, lit mags and journals or founding editors can maybe other things they can try before setting up reading fees, right? Make sure you've exhausted all options before you start putting fees in front of submitters, right? Yeah, in terms of funding and stuff. So AI and bot protection. So it says they offer protections against unwanted bot submissions. And yeah, so I mentioned AI a little bit, in terms of Dapple, right? They have that Ash AI assistant tool, which is optional. If you're curious what that is, listen back to that. And that is basically for quick setup, form creation, and stuff like that. And Submittable, I think, also has an AI assistant tool for form creation, for creating forms for grants and stuff like that. I've never really used anything like that, with every submission system I've been on. I've never touched, any AI creation form tools or anything like that. So I think it's nice they have like AI and bot protections, because sometimes, lit mags and journals get a bunch of weird, it depends like which submission system you're on. If it doesn't have preventive measures like that, you can get a bunch of spam and unwanted submissions and relevant things. So yeah. And yeah, so it says, you have a goal to respond to all submissions, bulk action or tools that will help you with this. it says, why it might be a right for your publishing product. You want to save money over more expensive platforms, and you're looking for fair, usage based billing. So yeah, I think that really stands out. Duosuma has like usage based billing, so it's based on the number of submissions you receive. I think per month, right? I could be wrong there, but yeah, I think usage based billing is unique. Now, some could maybe not be a fan of usage based billing. I know some like to have a fixed bill for the month or fixed bill for the year. So, that may be something, but I think in either case that is cool that they do that. And yeah, it says you keep 59 cents more on every fee transaction than you would with our main competitor. I'm going to assume submittable, right? And that's even after the payment processor has taken their cut. That can really add up. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. They do have like a reward program too for quick responses. It's called like the Gold Star program. And yeah, again, Dual Suma is free for people who are looking to submit. However, right, you know, uh, some lit magazine journals I mentioned have fees, right? So just keep that in mind. And then a Duotrope account is required, but a Duotrope subscription is not required, for Duosuma usage. Duotrope subscribers do get extra perks, though. You can read more about that. In either case, again, Duotrope and Duosuma, they're both awesome, I believe, for sure. It's just it's a great space to find, calls for submissions, and to come across lit magazine journals maybe you've never heard about. I think Duosuma is only available in English, too, by the way. However, I know, Duosuma is accessed by others all over the world, right? And writers and poets from everywhere. So I think that's really great. But yeah. So the Gold Star program, I just was mentioning this. Sorry, I got off track here. But the Gold Star program, so it rewards publishers that respond quickly to their submissions, and you have to qualify, right, to get a discount, 25% off Duosuma pricing, including block purchases, and they'll cut, their commission in half on fee required submissions. So that's nice, right? And yeah, so you have to meet the criteria here, right? You have to respond to at least 10 submissions through the Duosuma platform in the past 12 months. Your account has to be in good standing, no overdue bills, right? Actively evaluating submissions in the past month and respond to submissions within 60 days on average. So that's nice that they, reward, fast responses, publishers doing that and stuff and being on top of being responsive. And yeah, so yeah, that's pretty cool. So I that's pretty much it. Let me see. I'm trying to think of anything else that I may have missed in terms of like pros and cons. There are a couple things I just covered here that I don't have on my pros and cons list. Obviously, I didn't cover every single thing. It's just the main points of like pluses and minuses, right, in my mind. But so yeah, I again really love, that, they only, charge when your submission windows are open, right? I think that's great, and it's usage based billing. um, I can't really, list a bunch of cons or anything like that because I haven't really used it myself, Duosuma, right? Just as a submitter, right? I have experience with it, but not as a publisher or lit magazine journal, right? In taking submissions. So I predominantly have experience. Again, I mentioned this podcast with Submittable and Subfolio and Oleada, and then like other intake form systems. And then I shared Dapple, right? A new one that's coming out as well. So yeah, I think Duosuma has a credit system too, and then yeah, so yeah, that's all I can really think of about that. Oh yeah, so as of June 11th, right, of this year, 2025, right? So CMP members now receive like a 20% off Duosuma, which is I think, was it 15 cents or 15 cents to 9 cents per submission based on submission volume for each month. And then yeah, I can't remember exactly. I think that's what it was. I have it, I think, in my list of pros and cons off the top of my head. I can't remember exactly, but in any case, they added a great discount this year, for those who use Duosuma. And I know, a lot of lit magazine journals are on, at the very moment, Submittable, Duosuma, it comes to my mind. And then there are a lot of like flash fiction writing places, short story places. Interesting enough, I see more so on Moksha. I'm not sure why. I've just come across a lot of places on Moksha that intake short stories, writing, and it's like sci-fi flash fiction. I don't know why that is, but that's just something I noticed, but I could be wrong. I haven't gone through the full list of like who uses Moksha and stuff like that. Moksha is another submission management system. I haven't really shared that on the podcast, and maybe I'll do an episode on that. But I just feel like Moksha's pricing is like way out of most, lit magazine journals' budget. But I know they have still a fairly large user base, so it's not, it just depends on like again your budget, what you're working with, what's going to work best for you, what features you're looking for really in your submission management system, and which one do you feel is like the easiest for you to set up and use, right? So yeah, it's everyone has again, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, when you do a trial of submission management system, you can tell pretty quickly in the first few minutes, or if you're gonna like it or not. Same thing about a movie, right? You watch the first few minutes of a movie, you're like, this movie doesn't look too good, right? But sometimes movies surprise you, and sometimes as you take a little bit more time exploring it or learning about it, right, you may, like a Swiss marriage system, right? You may come to like it, love it, and you may learn something new, right? It takes time to learn new submission management systems and any software or platform you're using. So don't it can be easy to get frustrated on new systems and things like that. But you have to really set aside time. I feel like to really grasp it a little bit and to learn the ins and outs of it, right? So it's always a good idea to, have a support team right behind the submission man system. And Duotrope has a great support team, and Duosuma, right? They have a great support team, I feel like. And Submittable has a support team. Subfolio and Dapple, right? They've just started, right? So they don't really have, I don't believe, like an extensive support team or help desk, right, at this time. However, as it grows, right, I'm sure that will change with those two. Yeah, same thing with Oli Ada. I think that was one just has one admin or the founder creator doing support on it and stuff and answering questions. And Oli Ada, I'm not sure if it's going to develop further. It's had a roadmap for a while, but I don't know if they're going to change it or add more features to it down the road or do anything further. In any case, Oli Ada has helped a lot of publishers. I know some still use it to today. It's a low cost option, right? I don't think they charge at this time, by the way, Oli Ada. But at one point in time, I think they mentioned when they grow large enough, right, they were going to think about doing that if it ever grew larger, right? Yeah. I felt Oli Ada was again pretty limited at the time, so that's why I got on the CLMP membership, joined Submittable, and then Submittable I really didn't really like again the team member permission setup stuff, and I felt it was always pretty difficult for like workflows and setting up team stuff, and there were just a lot of limitations with Submittable, right? You can only have 6 projects open at a time. You can only have a certain number of form fields in each category, so it's really restrictive on the even if it's still great, right? We have a you get a CLMP membership discount, right? Submittable, but it's still, you have limitations there, right? You can't use all of the features and bells and whistles of Submittable, right? And yeah, so I feel like Subfolio really has less restrictions and more breathing room for more categories and calls. I think Duosuma is, right up there with Subfolio. And I think Dapple, I'm not sure. I haven't used Dapple myself or anything like that, but Dapple definitely has a very modern and sleek design. That's what I really liked about it, just looking off the bat at it. But I'm happy with Subfolio at the moment, so I'm not really looking to shift or move. I can't remember when I, started Dippy or something when I was looking at submission management systems and testing them out. It's possible I tried out Duosum or something. I can't remember fully. In any case, I looked at Moksha too, and I ended up, going with Submittable, and then, after almost a little over 2 years again, moving to Subfolio. So yeah, anyways, that's pretty much all I can think of. I think I showed you guys, right, Duotrope, listings, what that looks like a little bit. Um, how about I show you Dippity's listing on Duotrope, just so you know what I'm talking about in terms of that. So, we don't use by the way, we don't use Duosuma for intaking submissions, but you may recall from the 32 poems episode I did, right? Um, 32 Poems is using both Submittable and Duosuma to intake submissions. So they're using two submission management system options. And so, yeah, I think you totally can do that. I don't think there's anything against having more than one submission management system. There's like nothing against that. So I think that's possible. I think it's just confusing, and it's better to just stick with one submission management system though to manage everything, right? But that's just me. So yeah. So yeah, you may recall that from the other episode. But let me pull up here our Duotrope page so I can just talk about Duotrope, right? And again, Duotrope requires a subscription, like a monthly $5 fee, and then like they have the annual plan. It's not too bad, $5 a month, right? And you get access to all of their resources, the listings, and you can really dive in. Now the listings again are public, right? You can check that, right? When I was hopping into listings and stuff, I wasn't logged in, right? But you get more access to things, in Duotrope itself. They have a full list. I'm not going to go through it here, but you can browse more around on Duotrope, right? So, you know, you can browse more around, and see, what they offer, right? It says here we can click on this, right? So, let's go through it. I said this wasn't going to be a Duotrope episode, but yeah, you can see they have listings here, so you get advanced search features, and they've collected a lot of reports, right, and things like that. So it's really beneficial, right? And yeah, so they have a free trial you can do too if you're not really sure about Duotrope or what that really entails, right? I'm just like talking about it, so it may be better if you like dive into it, right, and do a trial of it and see if you want to get a membership with Duotrope. Yeah, so it helps you stay, up to date on things, and stay informed, right? So yeah, so um yeah, and they have a listing of the day here. That's pretty neat too, right? So yeah, so yeah, let me pull up our listing here, right? So, again, they have information for submitters, and things like that, and then they have information for publishers and agents. And if you're interested in test driving, Duosuma out, right, you can request, an account, and or you can chat with them to learn more. Obviously, right? Yeah, and real quick, guys, I think I accidentally mentioned this was favoriting your, lit mega journal, but no, the star is indicative of the gold star program. That's what I meant. Sorry, I misspoke there. So yeah, if you click on this, you can see this publication is part of the gold star program. Again, I mentioned, right, that entails that they have done a good job, right, to qualify for that, in terms of, having, rewarding fast responses and things like that. They meet the criteria of the gold star program, which is nice to see, right? And there are other ones, you can see at the gold star. And I'm sure, in Duotrope, when you're signed in, or, you're looking at opportunities, right? I think there's a way to bookmark them or something. I can't remember. I haven't been on logged in or anything in quite some time, or, so you can check that out. But like, yeah, Submittable has a save feature too on their like discover opportunities pages and stuff like that. So yeah, you see different things, right, when you're logged in for sure. So, you have to, create an account, to really check that out. So, yeah. Anyways, yeah, so you can totally sign up. So real quick, I'll show you, our Duotrope page, we're not using Duosuma to intake submissions again. We use Subfolio, and prior to that, we were on Submittable, right? So yeah, this is what our listing, looked like last one. Now, something they do, I really like this. They take like a screenshot of the site, or some have sort of like hero image or cover image, right? Even for chapbook series and stuff like that. This is what our website looked like, a month or two ago. I changed our website design slightly and added some digital collages of mine and stuff. But who knows? I may do another update to our design again. So that's what it looked like at some point in time, and I like that they do that. And then they have about information. Now, something about this, right? So again, Duotrope does listing checks, right, and regularly, right, across the year and each month, right. So they do a good job of that. So sometimes it takes time to get around to listings, right, and stuff like that. So that's why I recommended right on this podcast, right, cross referencing different places, right. Chill Subs is another search database, right, and on Chill Sub is more so on the editor to ensure the listing and calls are updated. Of course, submitters or those poets and writers encountering the listing, right? Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, this listing, there's they maybe will um, mention something about it, or notify chill subs about it, right? But more so it's on the editor, right, to keep that listing updated, the calls that are open, whether it be recurring or certain windows, right? And it's hard, to keep tabs on that. I know a lot of places keep tabs on their open windows on their site and through their submission management system at the minimum. But yeah, so Duotrope does really help, update those listings. You will see here though, if I scroll down, right, it's going to show where temp closed, and that's not true. We're actually open right now. Yeah, so they just haven't gotten around to doing a listing check on, things like that, and stuff like that. But eventually that will change for sure. And yeah, so if you go on Chill Subs, right, we have our calls open, and we have more calls open than that. I entered in mostly our main calls, and as obviously as others, stumble across those calls, they'll check out the other ones. I try to enter all the calls though that we have. Sometimes it's hard, right, for us as editors to do that, right? Like every single call we have open. But yeah, so we have more than that. We had up to 10 calls the other month, and then some are closing or winding down or just closed out. So yeah, so I think, Duotrope is awesome, right? You get a lot of information, on the calls and everything, right? And yeah, so you even get, accuracy reports. Not a whole lot have, we got about 8 reports in a duotrope, right? So not a lot. And others can like bookmark. Oh yeah, so others can mark it as favorite, right? Yeah, I was forgetting like where that was. So it's just for a moment, my memory was like fuzzy. It's just fuzzed up for a second there, guys. So or blurry everything. Anyways, yeah. So they sometimes put the publication frequency in there. We're doing a relaunch, so we don't really have that information in there, at the moment. But yeah, it says we have a faster than most magazines, our average, and 9 members have favored this magazine thus far, and Chill Subs has that bookmark option you can see there. And, so and the new rating system is there too, right? So making a recommendation to magazine. I think it'd be interesting if, there could be actually be, typed feedback to lit magazine journals in there or something, like Yelp. That's what I was thinking too. But any case, I think that rating feature is really nice. Who knows? It may evolve over time, or they may add to it. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So we have Dippy Lit Mag, and then we have also a Dippity Press listing, right? And yeah, so you can see, we don't have fees at Dippity Lit Mag, but we have fees at Dippity Press. So maybe one day we'll be able to be fee free at Dippity Press, but just Dippity Lit Mag this year we discontinued submission fees, right, again. So we do have disabled writers fee waivers on our chapbook series, but yeah. So anyways, I would say I was pretty close to almost choosing Duosuma, as a submission management system myself. I think it is, definitely. I give submission management systems ratings. If I had to give it a rating, it probably would be like 4.3 out of 5 or something like that, around there. Almost 5 stars for sure. Duosuma is definitely really great. They do a lot for, and Duotrope overall, the umbrella, right? They do a lot for writers and artists and poets. It takes a lot of work to make sure these listings are up to date, that the information is accurate. Because if you have, wrong or incorrect listing information and stuff, it just makes everyone confused, right? And it's hard. And a lot of lit magazine journals every year drop off the face of the earth, right, or disappear. And they do a good job of like marking which ones are defunct or no longer active, and or when places are closed and open. So they do cycle through their listings and go through those. I've had really great interactions with their support team and everyone. They are very responsive, and said, hey, can you actually fix this or change this? Like if I were to email them or something, or message them, right, they get back pretty fast, is what I've seen. Obviously, right, as time goes on, it becomes, they have more and more listings and more, I think the time perhaps could change or something, or their support team structure maybe needs to grow. But for the most part, they've always been very responsive, very helpful. And I think that's very important, right? Whichever system you're going to use, both as, a publisher or a writer, or, you want to have a support team or somewhere you can ask questions and get that help you need, as, yeah. So anyways, check out Duosuma if you're thinking about, setting up a submission management system, or, a lot of these submission management systems have trial, accounts, or you can create a trial, right? Or set it up, or request one and reach out, right? And then see if it works for you, for your lit mag or journal that you're going to set up or facilitate. I would say again, Duosuma has that usage-based billing, so that sets it apart from most of the ones out there, the main ones, right? Submittable and that. But if you're someone who likes having a fixed monthly bill, then maybe yeah. Anyways, I think that's nice. Either case, I think it's not necessarily a con, right? That they do that. That actually could be beneficial, right? And yeah. So again, I have a pros and cons list where I outline, just the main points I mentioned, and I'll update the list actually today a little bit with some of the stuff I just talked about, and I forgot to add in that list. From I made a list back in June. I've been like updating it gradually, So yeah, and I don't cover again all the features of submission management system or anything like that. I didn't really show you the submitter's perspective or anything like that at this time. But like if you go out to write 32 poems, I showed you that episode, right? What it looks like when open call and things like that, right? And yeah, so I think that's it. Yeah, so I mean, let's go over here. Actually, let's go to an open call really quick. I can show you one. Yeah, so let's check out, let's see, Crossroads Review. Yeah, let's check that out. So it says this project has an established quota. So this is what it looks like, when you're going on the Discover Opportunities page. And then you can see it's free to submit to this open, right? And it says it closes September 30th, Tuesday. And yeah, and then you can, click submit, and then it takes you here, right? And yeah, and then says you're not logged in. You need to log in before you can submit, right? So yeah, it says the subscription is not required to submit. So yeah, that's basically what the submitter sees, on some of the calls, right? If you're going through the Discover Opportunities page, and yeah, or let's say a publisher has a link to, their submission call, right? Yeah, or Duosuma call, right? And then yeah, you just have to create an account. So it's not too bad. It just takes a few seconds to create an account, usually a minute or two, very very fast. So yeah. So check out, Duosuma, right? The submission management system. If again you're a lit mag or journal or publisher at this time or looking to become one. And if you're a writer or an artist or poet listening to this episode, right? Again, make sure you check out the Discover Opportunities page, right? A lot of submission management systems have these Discover Opportunity pages. And yeah, so be sure to listen back to episode 51 again, 48, 36, and 35. And yeah, look into maybe doing a trial of Duotrope, as a writer, poet, or artist, and see if you want to sign up for their membership, right? Their monthly fee is like the monthly subscription is like $5, so it's not too bad, it's pretty low. So I think it's, Duotrope's packed with a lot of great, resources and features and stuff, and it really helps writers find things and keep tabs on their favorite, lit mags and journals and presses and contests and things like that. So, they have a lot of listings in here. Same thing with chill subs, right? And yeah, so that's all I wanted to, take the time to share today. Yeah, just talk about Duosuma's pricing plans, some of the features, just, listing it out from their site, just sharing that with you. Duosuma's existence again, right? Same thing with Dapple, same thing with Subfolio. And, most are aware about Submittable, right? And yeah. So take care, guys, and bye. So again, I lied about taking a break from like podcast episodes for a while. And yeah, I know I definitely won't have time later, so I'm just doing this now. So try to do as many episodes as I can before, the close. Well, I have some things with Dippity and stuff and other stuff coming up, so I just wanted to do as many episodes possible because I was looking back at, some of the things that are ahead right later in the year. So I just wanted to do these episodes now rather than later because I know I won't have time later. But yeah, sometimes I say that and then, our schedules change. So who knows? But anyways, I'm just trying to do as many episodes as I can, before my schedule changes or gets, a bit hectic or, some other things come up. So take care, guys. And I hope this episode helped you. Check out Duotrope, check out Duosuma. Again, Duosuma is Duotrope's submission management platform, and it's awesome. P.S. guys, I know I just said bye and take care, but I almost forgot. So, Duosuma, like the other submission management systems I've covered, right? Subfolio, Dapple, right? And, a couple other ones in existence, right? So they also use Stripe, right? So Duosuma, I was going through their documentation a little bit, earlier, and I completely forgot they do use Stripe, I think for payments and stuff too. And who knows, over time that could change, but, I think not everyone likes Stripe, but I think the good thing about Stripe again is that there are faster payouts, right? It's not like I think with Submittable is like set up currently. it is pretty, even for like pretty slow, I'd say, right? I think with submittable, you have to wait a full, right, 30 something days, right? I mean, if you're a publisher or, Lit Mag or Journal, and let's say you have donations you receive from your submission management system, right? I think submittable is on the slower end when it comes to that currently. So that's the only thing. And I think, even for like facilitating, I don't know if it recalled, well, we can check. Let's go out here. The documentation's public, right? So I'm not logged in here. Um, see, it says guide to billing credits and fees. So, yeah, and then it talks about their credit system, tip jars and payments, right? So yeah, and something, Stripe isn't supported by every single country, it looks like, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So that's why I listed as a con as well, because not everyone is able perhaps to use Stripe, but a lot are technically, I think Stripe still has pretty good coverage in terms of that, but not necessarily, right, because you have to be in a country where Stripe is supported. It's their payment processor, right? A lot of litmegs and journal submission management systems I've seen, the ones I've encountered, about three of them now are using Stripe, right? So yeah, and you can read more about this credit system and then Stripe and the billing and payments, yeah, so they have a guide. I went out to documentation, right? So they have Duosuma documentation for publishers and agents, and then they have documentation for submitters, right? So separate guides and documentations. So, if you're curious a little bit more about Duosuma and what that entails, some of the features and stuff, and you can check out this documentation, KB articles, essentially, to learn more about it and read. Yeah, obviously, it's best to do a trial of whatever you're going to possibly use, so that too. But it's nice that they have it very organized and everything like that. Now, something I mentioned, I wasn't sure when Duosuma was created, but if you scroll all the way down here, right, it looks like 2018, right? That's when Duosuma, I think, came to be, just based off of that. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyways, that's what I'm assuming by that, because I saw 2005, right, on Duotrope, right? If we go to Duotrope, right, and you can see they have guides on like how to report your submissions and to track it and stuff, and it's really detailed. You can see there's filtering and sorting here, right? And yeah, so they have a submission tracker. Duotrope has a submission tracker, which is really nice, and they use that, this tracker here, and I'm not logged in, right, but this is what it basically looks like, just a visual perspective of it, like their submission tracker, and it has the date sent. You can record that date, the status and everything, right? And then Duotrope uses this data, right, and puts that on the listing page I showed you, for example, right? So the Lit Magazine Journal's listing pages, it puts those stats out there. So you can read more about Duotrope submission tracker. Again, you have to create an account, but I think that's really beneficial, for those who don't like, perhaps using an Excel spreadsheet or things like that. Now, ChillSubs does have a submission tracker as well, right? And I created an article around that a little bit and showed you that, in the Chill Subs episode earlier, part one, right? And yeah, the thing about Chill Subs Tracker, they have like a notification, right, on the import sections, or like, warning, do not, I think it says, do not import any Duotrope tracker, spreadsheets or anything like that. So you have to be mindful about that, because some submission management systems, they let you export, right, your submissions and statuses of them into Excel spreadsheet. But you have to be careful about like where you're like, migrating your Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that. I think, what's beneficial to do is to have, like, I know a lot of poets have their own personal Excel spreadsheet that they just keep tabs of everything, and then they use these additional trackers to, as a backup, or to keep tabs on where they've submitted, and then they go back to their Excel spreadsheet, updated, it's all color coded and organized. Now, yeah, so I like, not everyone, uses the same submission management system, or, things like that. And, so it's yeah, so not everyone, tracks their submissions through Chill Sub. Some use Duotrope submission tracker, and then some just use submittables, right? The status page, right? That I showed you earlier in episode 35, right? A little bit, right? the acceptance decline section, right? You can see that, and you can create exports of that, right? I believe so. Yeah, you have a lot of different options for keeping track of your submissions. Again, I made a brief Substack article on this. For the most part, I've seen, again, poets have their own Excel spreadsheet, and there are a lot of free templates and guides out there for submission tracking. I've even seen some out on Etsy that are a couple dollars or something like that others have made, but there are a lot of free ones out there, like I think through Substack, the Forever Workshop, or some Substacks. I've seen other poets share what Excel spreadsheet they use in terms of tracking submissions and stuff. But these tools are really beneficial, and they really help, listings and stuff and reporting data. So it's absolutely important to, track your submissions. Like if you're going to submit through, Duosuma, right? And you have a Duotrope account and you're on their subscription, right? It's beneficial to really leverage this. It helps you keep track of your submissions, stay organized, and it also reports data back for other submitters who come across the listing. So it helps others too. So yeah, you can read more about how to report submissions, a little bit more about Duotrope's benefits of their subscription and things like that. I'll put links to the documentation, for publishing agents and document for submitters, and yeah, in the description again. So I just wanted to tack that on because I forgot to mention that. So that's all. That's all I can think of. So yeah, again, check out Duosoma. That's Duotrope Submission Management Platform. Also check out Duotrope. If you're a writer, poet, or artist, it could definitely help you. And yeah, it's a great resource. Absolutely, tons of listings. They have thousands, right? So they're in Duotrope, right? So yeah, and that's pretty much it. So obviously I didn't cover every single thing. So again, it's beneficial to read through some of their KB articles, the documentation, whether you be, a submitter or, a publisher agent, looking for a solution to some of the things I mentioned, right? Could definitely help you. So take care, guys. Now, bye. I promise no more PS notes on this episode. Bye, guys. Yeah.